care about current affairs, it's on the Oshow. And when you want to get clear what's going on here, it's on the Oshow. If you like to stay in the know, tune yourself into the Oshow. It's the Oshow. Laura Babcock.
Welcome to the Oshow, Canada's current affairs show with strong opinions. I'm your host, Laura Babcock. And the scandal panel assembled to be here today because, honestly, what kind of a premier, what kind of a person punches down on the poor, on the most vulnerable? Who uses them as scapegoats for their own ineffectiveness and their own failures? Doug Ford does. That's who. Doug Ford, who can't make his own affordable housing targets, who can't seem to get any project done properly or on budget, who has decimated healthcare, who has taken away proper ODSP payments for people so that they can't afford to live and to eat, people who have disabilities, people who are unhealthy, he says he cares for, he doesn't. And just when it couldn't get worse for all those folks and all the people who have been kicked out of their apartments because of loss of rent controls, one of the first things Doug Ford did to this province when he became premier. Now, all of the people who are now finding themselves in homelessness, what does this premier have to say about it? Does he take any accountability for his policies, for his own failures, or does he just do what awful people do, which is to punch down on the most vulnerable, on the people who need his help the most, and just go ahead and tell them to get off their ass, and then the next day double down as though somewhere, somehow, this premier who was born on third base and thinks he hits fucking home runs, like somehow he has the right as a Nepo baby, as someone who was born into wealth and given a business and given political clout, he has the right to tell people to get off their ass and get a job. You know, fuck him. I think I say this on behalf of the entire province. Gentlemen, welcome to the Oshow. Whoever would like to start, go ahead.
Well, for the premier to, come out, especially as you say, with the record of growing homeless encampments across the province, and basically start right off the bat by, let's just perpetuate that myth, because it's a very easy sell, especially among some right-leaning voters, that they're all just lazy buggers that don't want to work. Come on, 32,000 of them, homeless people, 32,000 homeless people in this province are either on Ontario Works, which is welfare, or disability support payments. They can't afford a roof over their head. They can't even, if they're lucky, they're sleeping in a car. And this is a premier who, well, I'm going to talk big projects. We're going to get stuff done. We're going to tunnel under the 401. We're going to do all this kind of, crazy big pie. And I said, well, how about tackling the one that's in our face every day, that municipalities are begging for help with, that police are begging for help with, that social agencies are begging for help with? It's homelessness. And it's not get them off their ass. It's get them a home.
Right.
Yes, I'm sure there's a certain percentage. There always is of people who are going to take advantage of any sort of social program like that. But it's tiny, it's minuscule, and there's no evidence that they're all able to work and they're just not looking for jobs. Go fill out a resume. Good God. I mean, that kind of callousness, especially when you've got people, we've got some serious problems. And these homeless people, they have no doctor, like 2 million other Ontarians. So they end up in the emergency department. And the doctors in there feel horrible because they have to put them right back out onto the street, without even really curing anything or treating anything hardly at all. So this situation, having come out with that, I was reminded of, and I'll show my age here, Alberta Premier Ralph Klein going into a homeless shelter and throwing out $20 bills and saying, get a job. That I thought was about as callous as you could get. This pretty much equals it.
But you know what Ralph Klein did? A month later, he came out, or a little while later, and said he had a problem with alcoholism.
And he sobered up.
And he took accountability for his shitty behavior and the horrible things that he said to those people that he had a responsibility to help and care for. What has Doug Ford done? What has he done? He's
going to take care of them for the rest of their lives. He's not taking care of them now. Who's going to believe that promise when you're not being taken care of now?
And the most expensive way to care for somebody is in the emergency department. So Doug Ford's failure to have family doctors, to have physicians for the people of Ontario is leading many people to use emergency rooms, which is costing us more. We have seniors languishing in the hallways, and Ford saying, we can send them to long-term care homes far away from their families, force them to take substandard care. He made it harder to sue the long-term care homes. He took nurses out of the hospitals to private places, paying 3 times more in our taxes to get those nurses back to work at those hospitals so his friends in the private sector with these nursing agencies can benefit. He has done so much. Rent control, primarily taking that away, forcing people onto the street, people with ODSB, as we've heard on the Oshow, trying to live on $13,000 a year. You can't even get a room for that in Ontario, let alone food. So this man who thinks somehow he's hardworking because he was given everything. You know, I was raised middle class, but I created my own goddamn company. My daddy didn't give me shit. And this premier who was given everything, including political clout, thinks that he somehow has the right to shit on people who have gone through enough trauma already under his leadership, trauma in their own lives, and all they're asking for is a little bit of help so that they can get into housing, so that they can get a computer so they can send in those resumes, so that they can get a change of clothes so they can go for a job interview, so they can get any kind of hope and help. And all he does is insult them. It is fucking disgusting. And I have never seen the people of Ontario more angry. They were angry about the Science Centre. They were angry about the Greenbelt. But you know, even in those cases, that was just a greedy man doing greedy things. When that greedy man doing greedy things takes away help from people and then blames the people for their circumstance, that is a level of low, Mark, that I didn't even think Doug Ford could go.
Well, when he made the comments, what struck me about it, not just that it was preposterous to say what he said, but that he said, "I will take care of you." He didn't say, "We will take care of you." He said, "I will take care of you." This man thinks he's a fucking king. He thinks this is his kingdom. I've said it before, and he acts like a king. He, and the worst part about this is that if you understand politics, this is nothing more than politics. Doug is preparing for a campaign where it's going to be us versus them. This is his campaign. The king wants roads, he wants booze, and he wants entertainment. And everybody else, those other people, want compassion. They want support. They want a just society. They want people to be lifted out of poverty. I don't understand this. He's not a conservative. Let's just get this straight. Doug Ford is not a conservative. Number one, he's blown more money than anybody in the history of this province. Bigger deficits, bigger debt. That used to matter to conservatives. So I'm sure there are a lot of conservatives who are like, But secondly, this attitude of punching down at people. Social programs, if they're done right, are more cost efficient. Putting people in homes, giving them a place. How do you get a job when you can't even have a shower in the morning? Like, it just, conservatives across this country used to be the people who understood that, when you put someone in homeless people spend on average 1.3 days in hospitals every month. That's like $1,300 every time they're there or more. That was an estimate that we used to use in government. Like, you can house somebody for far less than that. You can provide wraparound services. But the problem is that we're in a society now. I'm getting really fucking angry about this, where people don't give a fuck about anybody else. They don't. I'm sorry. That's a generalization. I know lots of your viewers care, and you care, and I care. But he is playing to a portion of the population that is comfortable with punching people in the face for their own fucking inadequacy in this world, for their own failings, to make them feel better about themselves. They want to punch somebody who's vulnerable to make it. Is this what we want? Is this, we want to elect more of this? We want to give this guy another fucking mandate? Like, honestly, I don't know. This week just got me off the rails because of all the big issues that are going on. This tunnel is just a distraction. It's never going to happen. Moving a subway line to benefit his buddies who own land around it. And everybody just goes, oh, well. Look, connect the dots. People need to start connecting the dots between the decisions that are being made by this government and who stands to benefit, because it's not you. It's not you. Sorry,
Well, exactly.
I'm so upset.
No. You know what? I'm glad we were exchanging our rage on social and our sadness this week. And I know Oshow viewers, big fans of the show, were reaching out to you guys too, because they were anxious to hear your take on this. We've been chronicling the corruption of this premier since the Greenbelt scandal broke, and you're both on this panel because Keith, our viewers know you now and our listeners, but you were at Queen's Park as a reporter for many years. And you're an investigative journalist. And Mark both was an editor of a paper regionally, but he also worked inside the Ministry of Housing for the last premier and understands what is going on. And so that connecting the dots thing, I think, is so important. First and foremost, it's important we don't lose hope. As they say in America, every single day, there are more people who are standing against Trump's cruelty and populism and garbage like we're getting from Ford. There are more of them than there are of people who support that kind of cruelty. We just need to see it in the election soon, in 40 days or whatever. Here in Canada, I have to believe there are more people who want to see other people get support when they need it, just as we would all hope to be supported if we need it. And they hate the cruelty that they're seeing from Ford, and they hate the cruelty they're seeing from Poilievre. Look at the vote in the House. Poilievre tried to, pull a big man move and look like a fool. I have to believe there are more people in Canada who do not like just that cruelty. And it is cruelty. People keep telling me, Laura, the cruelty is the point. Ford is trying to be cruel on purpose because I guess it gins up some base. It makes some people feel better about themselves to make other people feel worse.
It's such an easy solution, isn't it? If it's their fault.
Right.
The fact that he canceled, even though he promised in 2018 campaign that he wouldn't cancel the Universal Basic Income pilot project, he canceled that. Do you think the growing homeless encampments across the province are a direct result of that kind of action by this government? Of course they are. Yeah. And that's the thing again. I remember Kathleen Wynne saying, she couldn't get any support from the federal government for her Universal Basic Income pilot project. And yet as soon as COVID hit, it was $2,000 checks for everyone. I think her basic income was $1,700 a month check. And it made a huge difference in the lives of so many people right out the gate. That kind of thing, that gives them enough money to have either, a roof over their head, a shower in the morning, and enough clothes to go for a job interview. Maybe access to a computer, that sort of thing. But it's so easy, though, for a government to just, let's face it, no one is happy about the homeless encampments. And if there's one all of a sudden pops up in your local park, you're liable to be angry about it as well as sympathetic. It may take you a little while to get to the sympathetic part because it's just, God damn it, we don't need this in our park. Our kids play here, we do this. Well, why are they there? And eventually I think that happens to a lot of people. Not everyone, clearly. But a lot of people will come around and go, Jesus, they're there because they have nowhere else to go. And what have we done? How have we gotten to this situation? How do we get ourselves out of it? That doesn't seem to be a question that this government is asking itself. How do we get ourselves out of it other than get off your ass and get a job? Well, isn't that sweet?
Well, if you look at some of the policies that we're seeing in Saskatchewan, right, there are premiers who are helping with the problem. It can be done. Premiers are responsible. And we know we say this every single time, but for people who might be new to the show and don't understand, it's actually Doug Ford's job to do healthcare. That's a provincial responsibility. Gets money from the federal government, supposed to spend it on the healthcare needs. Clearly, he's not doing that. The money is going into the private sector. And when people complain that they can't get an MRI because they have to pay extra in the private sector to get to the front of the line, the premier, Doug Ford, laughs and says they should go to a veterinarian clinic, right? So he's literally telling people you're worth as much as dogs if you can't pay a premium pay to play kind of a thing in this province. It's a province that he is creating for the wealthy developers who want mansions on the Greenbelt, who want to be able to see their towers in the sky on the lands of the Science Center or anywhere else that he's given up for them, moving subway stations to them so that they can make their billions and they can drive their fast cars on uncluttered highways and even a stupid tunnel under the 401 just to distract us from the horrible things he said about people in poverty. All that's going to do is enrich his friends who are going to speculate about their contracts and put in bids. And we're going to watch all of our money, our hard-earned money, go right out the fucking door to his rich friends. Like Mark said, connect the dots. This is corruption. We're being lied to by a premier who said he wouldn't cancel the basic income and did, who said he wouldn't touch the Greenbelt and then tried to give it to his friends. We're being lied to. It's a form of corruption. We had an auditor's general report come out, did we not, guys, since the last time we talked, talking about the money that was wasted on the booze contract, the money that's been spent on these ads that he does around the province. We are literally watching a king-like structure, an anti-democratic kind of leadership that is saying the people who are the plebeians, you can suffer. the wealthy, my court, as you said, Mark, are going to get all the benefits of being in the court of the king and letting the king have the kind of Ontario he wants. The problem with that is that there are many, many more people in this province who don't have access to the spoils of the king, who don't even get the scraps off his table now because he thinks that they should figure it out on his own, even though he's creating circumstances that are making it near impossible for people. So I think saying that clearly, otherwise we're being gaslit. You know, there's going to be some cheesy ad coming out with him baking a fucking pumpkin pie, and it's going to ring hollow and do harm to so many people. And I just want to pick up on that harm piece, because when you talk, Mark, about that people don't care, and maybe more people care than don't care. I have to believe that to get out of bed in the morning. But I will say this, when a leader, it has been proven that when a leader uses this kind of dehumanizing rhetoric, this us versus them, they are lesser than us. They don't deserve the dignity. They don't deserve our respect. They don't even deserve our kindness. Even if we're angry, they don't deserve basic human decency. What that does is create a permission structure for people who are angry about their own lives, for people who are looking to punch down on someone to say, oh, you know what? The premier says that this is how it is. Fucking right. This is how it is. There is a homeless tent near our house, which we've never seen, of course, on the Hamilton Mountain like this. We went to go leave them food. They moved. We went to check on them. We said, why'd you move? Did you eat the food? They said, we moved because someone was shooting at us with a paintball gun and someone tried to take our dog, and we thought the food might be poisoned because of the way that people have been treating us. So we didn't eat the food. So they went hungry rather than be poisoned by angry neighbors. Hear how fucked up that is, Ontario? Like this, we just found this out from these people the other day. So
life wasn't shitty enough. They have to live in fear.
They have to live in fear of getting shot at while they're just minding their business, trying to sleep in a tent outside. I mean, so when Doug Ford, says that these people's problem is not based on his stupid failed policies on all kinds of metrics, because he's a failure. His daddy gave him a job, doesn't do it very well, doesn't do the politics job very well. All he's good at, apparently, is enriching richer people than him. So he's a failure. And what he does when he blames his failure on the people he's failing is create a permission structure for cruelty. It's a scapegoating of the poor because he sucks at his job. He is a failed premier. He's not good at things. He's just a spoiled Nepo baby, and is proving to us how corrupt and how big of a loser he is. So it's up to the rest of us to change that narrative, to tell people who say stuff like that around us, actually, the premier is wrong. And here's why. Actually, those people would love to work if they could, but they can't afford a room. They can't afford food. They have nowhere to shower and use the washroom. Imagine starting your day from that deficit, let alone the drug poisoning that we have in this province, right? There's a drug supply out there that is far worse, and people would go to safe supply clinics as a first step to recovery, and Ford has shut those down now too. So we're going to see more people using in the parks. We're going to see more people ODing on the streets in front of our children, and that's on Doug Ford. So guys, let's pick up on that. We saw the stats that say that Ford is still in a comfortable lead in the election. Bonnie had the next chunk of the pie. Merritt's piece was smaller as the only official opposition party. What does that say to you? And how can the truth be put out if we're not seeing the Liberal Party in second place, or the NDP seeming to get a hold of how to switch the narrative? Let me go to you, Keith, first.
Well, of course, we had the very quickly called by-election in Belleville, the Bay of Quinte by-election. Todd Smith quit as former energy minister and very short-term education minister to take a job in the energy sector. But what was interesting there, the Tories did hold the riding, but the Liberals came way up in their vote and came a very close second, which has really got to be encouraging for some Liberals, because they've had some bad news in a lot of elections. So this is actually, even though they didn't win it, it's still good news for them. The NDP, barely 20% of the vote. As you say, the official opposition. What does that say to us? It says that the NDP are in a real battle of the lucky if they can hang on to official opposition status in the next election. And as you say, Ford and his government are still hanging around 40%. A large part of that, I have to believe, is in part because of Bonnie Crombie, as Liberal leader, being still basically missing in action and missing the plot, I think, in many ways. She had a news conference the other day, and I think it was on a story I think is really important, the $1.5 billion being spent on agency nurses in the past year, as opposed to being spent in the public sector, the public health system. But she was asked a couple of other things, like about bicycle lanes. And I forget what the other topic was. And she says, we're not here to talk about that today. Well, the reporters are telling you what stories they're writing when they ask that question. And if you want to be in it as the leader of the third party, if you're lucky, you give them a quote. I mean, and even premiers don't use that, or they try it on occasion, but they know we only have limited access to them. So they know we're not going to be always on topic. Unless you talk about tunneling under the 401, then we're going to be on topic because it's just so off the bloody beam. And that, back to Mark's point, that's just such a massive distraction to get people not talking about emergency departments being closed and doctors treating people in ambulance bays and all this kind of stuff. Why? Why is it not penetrating through to the general public as a massive opposition to this government? It's one thing to say, we want the NDP and the Liberals to coordinate their campaigns so the left doesn't lose everything to the right, but they wouldn't beat them anyway. They'd be challenged to. The Ford government is in such position, you would think that all these scandals would be chipping away, would be hurting them. The fact that police are still investigating the Greenbelt scandal, and we keep mentioning the RCMP are investigating the government of the Greenbelt scandal, and it's like, he apologized. So I don't know how they're going to break through, but I do know that the Liberals and their new leader have to start making some kind of a difference. And quickly and getting an impact out there, because right now I feel that most Ontarians, if they know Bonnie Crombie at all, is from the ads that the PCs bought defining who she is, the queen of the carbon tax, all this kind of nonsense. Her not taking positions on key issues and refusing to answer, I'm not here for that today. Well, you're in no position to be dictating that. You answer the damn question.
You know what makes me so insane is and I'll go to you in a sec, Mark, but I didn't know that Bonnie handled that so badly. I'll say again on the Oshow, Bonnie, you're welcome to come on. We had your former Liberal leader on, and one of her clips hit 300,000 views. So I'm saying on one platform, that's not even the aggregate. So it's insane to me that they're not taking the opportunity to come on this program and tell us why they think that they can make inroads or at least hold Doug to a minority. I would be happy with him losing his king status, Mark. So, I mean, yay, they got a little bit better rating in a by-election, and they came out with their dumb slogan, moving forward, more for you, right? But I mean, I'm trying to see where they come out with a hammer of advertising, defining what more for you means, unpacking it, hitting all of the pain points. I just wrote a marketing strategy for a client this week. I wanted to send it to Bonnie and just say, this is what I write for my business clients. Could you do this for the province? It's not that fucking difficult. Anyway, Mark, how can they do anything?
Well, I mean, they just had their convention, right? So I think that there was a lot of these kinds of conversations. A lot of people, suggesting that the time is now to get going. I've noticed this week the Liberal headquarter, the OLP headquarter social media accounts are getting quite good and cheeky and fun. They're pushing back.
Yeah.
I think Keith's right that by-election result is a very good result for that party. I think, it's like, I still believe, and I know, we are all addicted to these polls, polling, and it's like crack to us. Like, it's like we can't get enough of it. But, again, I mean, the only poll that matters is on election day. The Liberals have limited resources. So do the NDP. They have limited resources. Doug, the PC party has a treasure trove of resources. So they need to spend it when it matters, when people are thinking about an election. I think they're starting. Yes, they need to define Bonnie. They need to get her out there. Yes, she should be answering every friggin' question that a reporter asks her. Yes, she should come on your show. She should go on any opportunity to talk to people and expose herself to those people. She should be taking. But I will say, I thought it was funny that after the tunnel announcement, the PC social media account, whatever, the PC people, they were waiting for Bonnie to say anything about it, and right away they tweeted that she's against it. So they were looking to bait her. So they obviously see her either one of two ways. They either see her as a legitimate threat, or they see her as, if they pound away at her, they split the vote between the NDP and the Liberals because people can't make up their minds, and they skate up the middle again like they've done based on the back of these rural ridings who are suffering the most but don't seem to care, whose hospitals are closing, whose infrastructure is not being upkept. Their emergency rooms are closing, like I said, and yet they're just, like lemmings. They go to the polling booth and vote Tory every time, because these are the kinds of people the most that I think enjoy kind of like ridiculing the issues that are plaguing some of our urban centers. They, well, that's why I moved in the country, so I don't have to look at that shit, and I don't know how we're going to get back to compassion. But I mean, I see it starting to switch in the United States. I see people, I think we're almost like 5 years behind them.
We always are. Always.
We got to do our punch down phase. We got to see what that's all about, and then we'll all like, oh my God, what did we do? And then the next government's going to come in, and the amount of problems that they are going to have to solve will derail them from doing anything that is popular, like building a new highway or things that people actually enjoy. They're going to have to put so many resources into caring for the problems that are being uncared for right now in our society. It's going to be, I pity the next governments, but, we need somebody else.
On your point about the U.S., I mean, it was great to see a bunch of truckers in Michigan flying Harris Walz flags.
Yeah.
They would have had Trump flags in the past, and one of our producers here has always said that we're 10 years behind the U.S. on everything. And if you look at it, tracks, right? I've often said Polyev is running the playbook of Trump in 2015-16.
Yep, absolutely.
So we're tracking to that 10-year. Maybe it accelerates a little bit because of social media. But I was in New York City this past weekend. I wanted to get down there one more time. Met some young people there getting out to vote. Did some videos with them for social. You know what? They've learned, and I'm hoping that Canadians can learn so we don't have to repeat the mistakes of our neighbors. And I just want to make a point, even on the federal campaign, we saw Trudeau being more pugilistic this week, right?
Yeah.
Trudeau did a good job on Colbert. He did a good job holding the Conservatives to account about the homophobic remark that was made. And, when we saw a Conservative MP trying to justify his remark and start yelling that he was never thinking about sex. I mean, if you're yelling that you're not thinking about sex, you lost the fucking argument. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing some growth with the Liberals federally, and maybe Trudeau's not supposed to be the person at the front of that party. I'd be open to Carney or whatever else. But the point is, we're seeing some pushback there. The Liberals provincially, locally, Bonnie, some pushback there. We're starting to see them obviously having an opportunity. And I think that's why they're being targeted, right? If you look at that poll, Keith, it's the fact that they're in second place when they should be in a far distant third place. It means that there's enough people in Ontario who want an option for Ford. But I think until there's a real option on the table, we're going to continue to see polls that have him way ahead. He's the guy they know, the devil they know.
Yeah, absolutely. And to the point about, them waiting to jump on Bonnie Crombie's position on the tunnel under the 401. Well, you can't have a wedge issue if someone doesn't oppose it. And so they're just like, they're against it. She wants more bike lanes. She wants, bike lanes. Talk about sticking in your lane, pun intended. For God's sake, if there's any municipal issue that really shouldn't be a provincial concern, it's bicycle lanes. Yeah. For God's sakes.
But it's the Ford war on the poor. It's the Ford war on the car, right? Yeah. It's the Ford saying, you know what, I want things the way they were back in the 80s when my rich daddy made my rich life nice for me and where we had everything and I don't want anything to change. It's the Donald Trump thing. It's why he likes that too. And it's why Kamala Harris's most organic big pushback line at her first big speech was the people started yelling, we're not going back. We're not going back. He's trying to drag our province back.
Absolutely. And it's all distractions, right? It literally is, so that we're not talking about the healthcare and the homeless and these other truly important problems that are not being dealt with. And instead, he's claiming to be an open book on the 413, which we have no cost ideas on. On the 401 tunnel, couldn't even give us a cost estimate on the survey. They're going to, the preliminary survey. It's claiming he's an open book. Well, really? What about the 95-year lease with Thermite? What all these? You're just anything but an open book on some massive, multi-billion-dollar projects. This has got to be a concern for people. No, apparently not. Like all of these things, even fiscal conservatives should be concerned about this. To Mark's point, they're clearly they don't care about deficits and debt anymore. Although the servicing on the debt is so far out of control as well, as it's like the fourth line item for this government. All of this is just it's just the wrong priorities. And yet this government seems to get away with, there's no doubt these big shiny announcements do, draw some attention. Shutting down the Ontario Science Centre on no notice whatsoever. After 2 weeks of stories. I don't know if they anticipated 2 weeks of stories, but it stopped us talking about a whole lot of other stories. And let's face it, outside of the Toronto area, a lot of people are like, for God's sakes, move on, people. It's a building in Toronto. Yeah, it doesn't have the same meaning to them as it does to so many millions of kids and parents who went to school trips there, or that sort of thing. So it's all about, as you say, wanting to go back to a kinder, gentler time. Well, those days are gone, and I'm sorry, but we know in those days how many people, if they dared to ride a bicycle on a city street, would take their lives in their hand doing it. And my favorite part on this was someone brought up the clip from that old TVO show. Was it blind dating or political blind dating? Anyway, it was Jugmeat and Doug Ford on bicycles. And the quote is Jugmeat, very steady. Doug, not nearly as steady on that bike, saying, and they're weaving around cars. And Doug saying, you just don't feel safe at all without a bicycle lane. No, you're not safe. Yeah. This is Doug Ford on a bicycle saying this in Toronto traffic. And now he's going to want to, get involved in this level of it. I guess to Mark's point, well, the king has issues all around at every level that he's going to try and deal with it. And this one just seems, again, to your point, part of this, anti-war on the car thing. I'm going to get you back where you want to go. The car is king. We're going to look at opening up that Spadina Expressway. Come on, let's bring that down. It's like, who knows where they're going, but it's definitely big ticket stuff, big distractions, and the idea of this tunnel ever getting built is.
But the common thread of all of those things, right? I mean, the suburbs were built so that cars could be in every driveway. That was the dream of the auto manufacturers. They literally built suburbs to sell cars. That was their marketing plan. And so we have got a premier, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but when you ask me to connect the dots, what I connect the dots to is the people who benefit from all of his policies are people who pour concrete, right? People who pour asphalt, people who dig, as one of our popular Oshow guests, Graham Crawford, tweeted, keep digging, Doug, meaning, this tunnel, and also digging on how horrible he is. He just keeps digging, he can't get out of these holes now. He's even talking about building new ones. But the point is, all of these projects have something in common. Right. And I was saying to somebody yesterday, I don't mind that people in the construction business, any part of it, it's big business. I don't mind them making money for their families. We need things built. I begrudge no one who works hard and makes money. Fine. Yay. I own a business. I get it. Work, make your cash. It's all good. But to punch down on others while you're being successful is sick. Okay. And it's not just Ford. We had prominent person in our community whose buddies with Ford, who put out that, homeless people are being bussed into Hamilton. That was disproven by a front page investigation by the Hamilton Spectator. Thank you, media, for doing your job. It was disproven. I had to tell my neighbor the other day, no, actually, those homeless people that you've always talked about wanting to help. Now my neighbor is like, oh, well, they're coming from Toronto anyway. Send them back. I'm like, that wasn't true. Right? It's not true. So, I mean, we are looking at powerful people who are punching down on the poor, who are saying things that aren't true, that are making people turn away from those people's needs. And I never mind somebody building something that's needed or necessary. What I mind is that this premier is taking money away from healthcare, away from support clinics for people who are in the opioid crisis, away from people who have disabilities. He is taking away MRIs from people who could be saving their lives. He's taking away nursing, proper hallways, good long-term care. He's taking all these things away just to benefit, it seems, one sector. And we have to look at that and say, you know what, your war chest is worth the suffering of all these people, and denigrating them so that people don't think you have any responsibility for them is a clever way of obfuscating all of his failures, right? So is that the dot connection you're talking about, Mark?
Yep. And it's a very exclusive club, like a very, very exclusive.
Name names.
And yes, and I'm surprised that the best example of this was done by the Toronto Star. They did that investigation about who owns the land on the proposed 413, and they did all the links, and and all of these announcements, you continue to see the same people tweeting their support for the announcements, the same people that would benefit from these public dollars They are taking public dollars and enriching themselves. And again, I agree. I'm totally supportive of Ontario building up and building things and everything else. But when it doesn't benefit everybody who's in those sectors, when there are winners and losers, when certain groups are picked, and what even strikes me more is that, if you're a labor leader, right? You're a union leader and you're punching down. That to me is where I kind of just get a little confused about what is a labor movement then. If it's punching down, it's not a union, it's not a collective. If you're punching down and you're not lifting people up, including the people within your organization, that's the whole idea, right? Is to create a collective to make sure everybody's getting a share. But we are seeing this, and it started with Monty McNaughton. He was very good at convincing some of these private sector unions that, look, you come on board with us and the pie is all yours. It'll all be yours. All the spoils of this, whatever we do in the next however long we're in power, will flow to you. And it's sad that people have lost their sense of morals or integrity or ethics, in that they've put that, themselves ahead of the good of this province.
I think sometimes when you get a populist premier who pops in and makes those kind of offers, the pie is all yours.
Yeah.
Greed is a powerful instinct.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping somebody out there who watches the Oshow who's better at social media than I am, when Ford comes out with his cheesy Thanksgiving where he's wearing a little turkey apron and he's teaching us how to make pumpkin pie, one of his gaslighting videos. I'm hoping somebody has him cutting that pie and giving it to all of the families on the Greenbelt list and the 403 list and the Science Center list and, the people who are supporting this tunnel list, right? I'm hoping that we just show us serving the pie to who's getting it. Keith, let me just end with asking you this, my friend. If you were still at Queen's Park doing what you did so well for so many years, and you had the opportunity to scrum Ford, what would be the questions that you would be putting to him? I know our journalists are doing the best that they can, but what would you be asking? What do you think would give the people of Ontario some of the insight that they need to be better informed about this premier?
I guess I would focus, because to me it's a very important thing, is on the privatizing of healthcare, which he just basically denies that he's doing. And says it's just for the benefit of everyone. We're getting it done. And I would ask him, he's losing $1.5 billion. I think it's $1 billion of Ontario, $1.5 billion and that was his response. Well, that's a national figure, and he just went on about how many nurses they're trying to hire and all this sort of thing. No, this kind of thing, and that's just one area. That's just agency nurses. That's not talking about the private surgical clinics that are being set up, for hips, knees, all these sorts of things, and charging 2 to 3 to 4 times what the OHIP system pays in the public hospital system. And what we see, what is he really prepared to do? Is he really prepared to take that much money out of the public healthcare system, as opposed to, he says all this about nurses. I saw a report this week, and it depends what province you're in, but basically between 25 and 45% of nurses leave the profession before they're 35 years old because they're just burned out and have had enough. All of this comes down to a government properly funding a system, not taking money out of the system. Why would you have? So I'd be pressing basically on this. And of course, every day, every question I had a chance to be was, have you been asked by the RCMP yet about the Greenbelt?
Yes.
Every single day I would be asked.
Wanting to know that. I agree with you. And let me just say, in case you haven't had a chance yet to watch the Oshow we did earlier this week around Ford punching down, we had on Guy, who is the person who wrote this Toronto Star op-ed about how safe injection sites saved his life, right? And he was very, very compelling. And we also had a master researcher on it, and I'll share this stat because I haven't done the clip with her yet, but I will. 8% of Hamilton's homelessness are dying.
Yep.
And if you, I think her math was, if you did 8% of the population of Hamilton, that'd be 45,000 people. So the question then becomes, what is it that we are not seeing in this crisis of health that is happening in our communities. We have a premier who is eviscerating and gutting the public healthcare system, putting all of the most vulnerable, from autism families to people with disabilities to seniors, in the most precarious situations, the most stressful, expensive situations of their lives. And they are going through absolute hell. And then we find out that there is that percentage of people who are living unsheltered, who are dying. I mean, how are we not, as a province, as our guest said on last Oshow, how are we not in mass mourning? How are we not grieving and doing everything we can to create emergency shelters right now, everywhere, to get people off the street so we don't see those kind of death rates from one of our populations, because we wouldn't tolerate it in any other population. And the words of the premier blaming on the people, saying they should get off their ass, that is him avoiding responsibility for those kind of death rates under his watch. Yeah. And it is disgusting and shameful, and we need to call it out. And for everyone who watches and listens to the Oshow and feels despondent or can't get through an episode because things are so dark, just understand that as long as we keep calling them out and talking about them and not falling for this premier's distraction and bullshit and his vision for a rich Ontario that's exclusionary of all the other people in our lives who can't find jobs, can't find first apartments, who are absolutely stuck in a rut because of this man, remember, it's his doing it. It's not the people who are being punished for his policies. It is him who is doing it.
I just want to add one little heartless thing that went by this week from him. Was when he said, going on about it was the alternative level care, forcing the seniors. People are dropping their parents off at the hospitals and just leaving them there. How could you be so heartless as to do that? You bastard.
Oh my God.
Seriously. No one, first of all, parents aren't being dropped off as couples. It would be either a mom or a dad. And what's happened, we went through this when my mom had Alzheimer's, and we were able to care for her up to a certain point, and then it started getting way out of hand. And the Alzheimer's Society, because we were working with them as much as we could, told us, well, you call for an ambulance when it's a situation that really requires it, you can't handle it, and you don't let them come send her home because she lives on her own. Let me tell you what kind of decision that was for a family to make.
Yeah.
And for him to say, we're just, dropping our parents off at that heartless bastard. I mean, I'm sorry, no family. Well, maybe there's some evil prick that does that kind of thing, but no family with any kind of heart does that to their parents. It's because they can't handle it anymore. And for him, so that was so heartless, it just went by. People didn't even notice.
I didn't even hear that. I'm glad you brought it up. And it reminds me also of something else. I don't even know if we got to it, guys, but it was about families in Ontario are now putting their kids into foster care because they can't get the services. There is no service availability for their kids who have high needs. And so they're having to give up their children into the system. So, I mean, the heartbreak for families to have to give away their children because they can't get the supports to care for them in home, the heartbreak for families to have to send their parents to a hospital knowing that this premier doesn't care if they languish in the hallways and is going to send them far away to a substandard place. I'm not going to call them long-term care homes anymore. They're not. Under the premier, they're just long-term homes, not even homes. They're, I don't know what we want to call them, institutions. There's no care being given. And so that hurts to hear that. It reinforces that the cruelty is the point. We need to call it out, though, and we need to demand better. And we need to demand that Bonnie, if she's got the opportunity, whatever is going on, I heard over and over and over that Harper had the war chest, and then Trudeau managed to come up with a Sunny Ways campaign that caught fire in the last 2 weeks federally and swept. I was on CTV that night, and they clipped me because when I saw him sweep into Quebec with those numbers, I thought, wow, like this is going to be a majority. He didn't have the war chest at the time. No one thought that he could make it, and he did. Yeah. So there is an appetite in this country that doesn't just prioritize advertising and war chests over doing the right thing for the people. And I just want to leave on that note. Mark, did you want to say anything else as we wrap up? But
I think that's excellent. No, I honestly, I couldn't have said it better. You're right. There is hope. Yes, there is hope that money doesn't mean victory all the time. And I think at the end of the day that, if people want, what I would say to people is like, let's get involved. Like, let's help, because the best resource, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have people who are passionate about what they're pitching out and are knocking on doors or are working telephone banks. And this isn't, I don't care what party you support, but this is what's happening in the US. There's a groundswell of people that are getting involved because they're done with the bullshit. And we all need to find the better people in ourselves and put it to use, because sitting back and bitching and complaining about it and, ranting about it isn't going to make anything different. And this is exactly what conservatives are banking on, is that we're all going to sit back and they're going to get swept in with 18% of the vote.
Yeah, well, you know what? Not on our watch. And I think that's excellent advice. If you're not registered with an opposition party, register. If you can help with $5, help. If you can call their offices and say, I want to see you at events, I want to hear more about what you're going to do to stop Ford, do it. Put the pressure on them, give them the kind of support they need. And we are seeing in the US, since Kamala Harris took over, the voter registration has gone through the roof. I forget the percent, like 400% increase or something on their voter registration push last week, even more than after the Taylor Swift endorsement. So, I mean, that's how you win, right? The king can never reign supreme forever if the people have had enough. And so let's remember that, and let's get our opposition parties working, and let's work on it ourselves. Gentlemen, thank you for your hard work. You could have just sat home and bitched and cried and had a stiff drink, but instead you gave some time to the Oshow. And, from how we cut our clips and how many clip views they get, it's, tens of thousands of people are going to hear what you had to say and hopefully help motivate them to make a difference as well. Thanks so much. So subscribe the show wherever you listen to pods and on YouTube. Let's keep building up the conversation and the momentum so that at least we are pushing back against cruelty and corruption in this province. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you care about current affairs, it's on the Oshow. And when you want to get clear what's going on here, it's on the Oshow. If you like to stay in the know, tune yourself into the Oshow. It's the Oshow. Laura Babcock's the Oshow. With a lot of great guests, she puts them to the test on the Oshow. There's no doubt they'll be calling them out on the Oshow. Stand for something or fall for it all. Ontario, hear the call of the Oshow. It's a podcast, the Oshow. Laura Babcock's the Oshow. Stay informed with the Oshow, Oshow.
Your merch bid.